Yeah, the silver one.
Yeah,
They're all
yeah.
silver, tall, big lady.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. She came like marching towards us at one point. I literally, language warning, shut myself. I went and hid behind something. I honestly, and I know that is so illogical because it's an actor and I'm in a theme park and I know this, but it was just, she was tall and menacing and just totally in character.
Yeah. Howdy ho, folks, and welcome to the In Search of Adventure show. I'm your host, Peita D, and I'm coming to you from the Adventure Club Room, where we reignite your curiosity for an extraordinary life, making sure you have all the skills in place to take back control of your own story. This episode, our action hero guest, Liselle Porfirio, and I travelled to a galaxy far, far away, visiting the new Star Wars world, Galaxy's Edge, at Disneyland, and also managed to tap into our inner child by fangirling all over an iconic Star Wars character while we were there. I cannot wait to revisit this incredible adventure with you. Alrighty, well, welcome to the show, Liselle. I'm so excited to have you join me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Not at all. You've been had, for sure. Now, first question, is it true you've hugged a Wookiee?
Oh, yes! Definitely goes down as one of the most fun things that's happened to me, yes.
Is it wrong that I have a bit of a crush?
No, he was cool.
Right,
super
tall
cool.
And bit growly.
Hairy,
like I think
yeah.
actually there's a whole lot of required. Now that went bad fast. Sorry, folks. We should explain. So exactly, we're here to talk about, visiting Star Wars in Disneyland. And Liselle and I reckon we were only about, 45 minutes in, I think.
Oh, yeah.
It was early, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And we happened across, quite accidentally, what they call a character meeting or a character experience, I think.
Yeah, experience.
Yeah, and so you get to meet these characters, and there just happened to be a sign that said Chewbacca. And I'm like, I wonder what that's about. We stood in a very short line, which is unusual too, in Disneyland. We come around the corner, and there is the very man himself, Chewbacca, and the first thing he does is hugs us.
Yeah.
Like,
so cool.
Okay, can't speak, too excited. And then it was a photo opportunity, at which point the staff that were helping, who offered to take the photos, also really well organised and lovely, and in a sort of space that was a bit Star Warsy, so the photo looks like you're there.
All in theme, yep.
Exactly. She was having trouble with maybe your phone or my phone or something to take the photo, and one of us cracked a joke at him saying you can't get good help, and then the guy responds in Wookiee.
We had a delightful conversation.
Right? Us in English.
Yeah.
We
all understood what we were saying with the hand gesturing and the pointing.
Exactly. And, it happened, and we sort of walk out and look at each other and I feel like maybe we should leave. Like that's the high point. I don't think it gets any better than that.
I think part of it is because it was we didn't know what we were actually entering or going in line for. We just saw Chewbacca's icon or logo and said, we're a fan, let's go check this out. Had no idea that we were going to see a live walking, breathing, Wookiee-esque actor and whatever.
Just incredible. And for whatever, I don't know, they must have a machine that makes sounds or whatever that in the language that he was speaking, because he was clearly speaking in the strange Wookiee language. The whole thing, it's so well done.
Yes.
We were immersed in minutes. We were immersed.
So realistic, and even to the point where later on, and I forget the character's name, but the chief stormtrooper lady in one of the most recent films. It's like
scary
woman.
Plasma. No, it's not that. But there's I should know that.
Yeah, me too.
The silver one.
Yeah,
they're all silver, tall, big lady.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. She came marching towards us at one point. And I literally, language warning, shut myself. I went and hid behind something. I honestly, and I know that is so illogical because it's an actor and I'm in a theme park and I know this, but it was just, she was tall and menacing and just totally in character.
Yeah.
And that, I think, was one of the magnificent things about this whole experience, was that they really go over the top, to make sure it's as realistic, or as real a representation of the movie experience or the cinematic experience and the whole
The world.
kind of story, the world,
Yes.
exactly. That you do really feel like you're there.
You do.
And that the characters are real. And yeah, it was
crazy.
It was amazing.
And so prior to the trip we did earlier in the year, you'd never been to a theme park.
An American
theme park, so the big ones.
Correct, yeah.
Right, okay.
The king of the theme parks.
Yes,
yeah.
where it all began, which is a bit bizarre, right? Because you've travelled a lot to the States.
Yes, I have. I've worked for American companies since the early 2000s, the late 90s. So, and I've been sent to the US for work trips and had, taken time and had side sort of weekends here and there and extended stays and whatnot, and seen a lot of great things and been to a lot of exciting places in the US, but I had never been to a theme park. So, yeah.
So it was a happy circumstance for us because we were both heading over effectively for work. I, being the uber Star Wars geek that I am, the minute I found out there was a whole Star Wars world at Disneyland, like, okay, got to go there. And they'd announced that I think it opened like May this year. So it had been on the radar, and I was going for an event and thinking, well, maybe I'm going to have to go on my own. And then you happened to be there at the same time and wanted to go to a theme park because you were. So it was a nice combo. Exactly. And so I guess diving into, I think both of us sort of took some interesting things out of Disneyland in general. But diving into Galaxy's Edge, so folks, that's what they're calling the world that they've created of Star Wars. And Disneyland, if you don't know, is sort of divided up into these areas that are themed, right? Tomorrowland and Toontown, yes. So they're all sort of themed. And so Galaxy's Edge is their Star Wars one. And what's interesting to me about that was it literally is, unlike the others where you're clearly in a theme park and there's rides that are themed. This land, you're stepping into a new world, which was different. Right
down to the dirty gravel sort of ground, as opposed to standard concrete or
tidy, painted concrete, whatever, with bins that are nice and shiny, like the whole. And Disneyland is done beautifully. And you're right, the minute you sort of cross that threshold, you are in a trading town for Star Wars. Like it's right down to staff. So there were stormtroopers that were getting us to hurry along. And even staff that were sort of, I guess, like maintenance staff are all wearing themed outfits. It was just...
And even the Coke, I remember it was standing in line, and even the bottles of Coca-Cola were done, they were sort of, the Coca-Cola label was written in a slightly different looking language or font, right? So to look like it wasn't in English. But
and a grenade sort of shape, weren't they? They were this funny round sort of grenade shape, like everything was, wasn't it?
It was so...
The minutest detail. And even the shops, so they were, it's Disneyland. So the first thing, if you've never been, the first thing you should expect is that every place has an opportunity to buy something. Merch, yeah. But even the shops, there was that little area where you sort of walked through, these sort of dirty archways, and in it was all the little sort of, shantytown almost style shops.
That's right.
Fully themed Star Wars. Which actually that took a bit of getting used to me, because in Disneyland, in some of the other areas, you're used to being, I'm in this area and then I'll go to a store and there's shopping. And so you're in shopping sort of head. Whereas I'm walking through this space trying to absorb the space. And there was also shopping I meant to think about. So it was quite...
it was like the market or something.
Yes.
So you were walking through a market which was part of town. But actually it was real stores where you could buy real things.
Exactly.
With real money.
Exactly. Very real money. As it turns out. It's fair to say we both did a little damage.
It went a bit crazy.
When we went to Disneyland. Thank goodness we did only 2 days, because I think our respective partners might have exploded had we been there longer.
I had to buy another bag to bring home my stuff.
So there's your first tip. Folks, if you are going, be ready, and you're a fan particularly, be ready to want to spend serious dollars.
Oh, you could buy, remember we finally went out to the edge to go back to the main park, and we walked to the outdoor bit, and you could buy, so the Luke Skywalker orange kind of aircraft jumpsuit thing, the helmet, the full stuff. Regalia. You could buy that whole thing.
Like we're talking thousands and thousands. Like you could really go nuts. You can build your own droid.
Oh, that was cool.
You know, you can build your own lightsaber. You can, like, they've gone to town.
BB-8 thing.
Yes, like it is completely nuts. And I guess one of my tips would be to remember why you're there. And you are there for the experience that you're not going to be able to get anywhere else, which is to be in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And specifically to be in the Millennium Falcon.
I was about to say.
So I'd really recommend you remember that, because it's so easy to get caught up in all of the stuff, and it's cool stuff.
Yep.
But I mean, like literally flying in the Millennium Falcon is something that anybody that's a fan has secretly wished. And so, I'd really spent a lot of time sort of focusing on that.
Yep.
Now, talk us through the ride itself. So there was quite the wait was about an hour. Was it about an hour?
Yeah, I think so.
Not too bad, right?
Yep.
So that's sort of normal for popular rides.
Yep.
I believe it got much worse when it first opened.
Yeah.
And so, and they sort of,
not to digress, but remember the 5.5 hour wait for the Hagrid's motorcycle
from Universal
Studios. Harry Potter World. God.
Upon which we made the executive decision we didn't need to go on Hagrid's ride. 5.5 hours for like a 3-minute ride just doesn't sound like a fair trade to me. That was insane, wasn't it?
Insane.
Yeah, it's and there is a bit of time management involved with this stuff.
Yes.
You've really got to be ready, and prioritising what you want to do.
Exactly.
So we were lucky. I reckon it was about an hour. We had a lovely, a young, remember he was about 10 or 11 with his mum, and he was super excited, and they were big theme park fans. So we sort of talked to them the whole way anyway. But it was this great journey, wasn't it? Yes. You're wandering past the Millennium Falcon. You got to look at that. You were going through tunnels, and they're very clever, aren't they?
I mean, you mentioned it before. The minute attention to detail is just astounding. I mean, because they anticipate there's going to be long queues and long waits, and you're going to often have kids or younger people perhaps with shorter attention spans, and will kind of get impatient with that very quickly. So unlike my previous experience, where it's just like following the snaking, path with the metal barricade,
exactly, or the braid or something that separates you from each other. Yeah.
This, you actually you're wound through almost like a pre-ride, if you will. There is vantage points, there is theming, there are these little kind of set up things that as you walk by, there's a recording of scenarios as if you're on the Falcon, and something's happening and someone's discovered something. There's characters, talking over the radio or over the PA.
Yeah. And
there's props and there's lighting and depending, I mean, not to digress from Galaxy or the Edge, but the Buzz Lightyear thing, there's there's things happening.
And animatronics sort of, absolutely.
And then
entertaining you the whole time.
We're being under attack, quick, and the thing's not shaking, you got to jump in the thing and off you go. Like it is so immersive from the minute you step over past the people who scan your badge, right?
Correct. Artfully distracting, very cleverly
you don't
done.
even notice that you've spent an hour walking, and it moves constantly, but you don't notice that you've spent an hour waiting to get on the ride.
And particularly, I'd say that particularly applies here in this new Star Wars world, because the whole thing is designed to just like, you just want to look at all the detail.
Yes.
Every dial, every handle, it's all done that way. So for a fan, you could probably wish you could stay in the queue longer.
Yes.
And in fact, I would argue when we finally did come up, and we were about to, so they sort of collected us together. So on the ride, 6 of you go on it together. 2 pilots, 2 gunners, 2 engineers, I think. Yep. And so they've collected you together with your 4 other people for us. And there was this waiting area, and the waiting area was the section in the Millennium Falcon where they play chess, that round area, and they've got the round table. But of course it was so quick, we started looking, and then they're like,
time to
come on guys, mission's on, move on. So I'd argue giving yourself a bit of time and making sure you're absorbing stuff as you go, because you will miss some really cool stuff.
Yeah. Yes. I often said to you, I feel like it feels like they've literally lifted pieces from the set.
Yeah.
Once they finish making the film, well, what do we do with this now? Put it in in a big hangar somewhere and collecting dust, or let's turn it into a ride. Or add it to
an
ride.
experience. Yeah. And so we had the lovely, mum and young son in our group, and then another couple behind us. And so we were the 2 gunners. And the young lad whose name is escaping me now, I feel like it was a Max or something like that. He was our pilot. And what's different about this ride, folks, this is not your average, this is a next level of ride. So the current level of rides are, virtual reality sort of stuff. So you're moving around. You may not actually be on a roller coaster. You're sort of wobbling around, and they immerse you in this sort of 3D experience, which is super, super cool.
With the animation and the
exactly, and all sorts of stuff, and the projected images and everything. It's great fun. We've loved all of those rides.
Yep.
What they've done with this is it's basically a role-playing game, an RPG game, where you sit in the Millenium Falcon while you play it. Like so they've lifted it a level.
Yeah.
Everybody experiences something different. So depending on what your pilot does and where they fly, you experience a different ride, which is insane.
Yeah.
We were exhausted, weren't we? Because we had to shoot down all the baddies. We're like, how do I work the button? What do I do? It was
I was hammering that button, mate.
Me too. We're responsible for making sure the Millenium Falcon gets through this journey. Like, we took it really, like, you couldn't help it. You're absorbed, and they're yelling orders, and they're like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, I would say you need to allocate at least 2 visits to that ride. I reckon if you were planning, like if I went back and planned it out, I'd do 2, because the first time, I reckon both of us would struggle to remember a lot of the detail of the ride.
I was so focused on what I had to do. I didn't take enough time to look up and look at the screen ahead and see what was actually happening, in the game around, the greater game around us. But or ride. But the couple that you referenced, the mother and son, this was their second time around when we bumped into them. So they'd already been on once, and they had been either engineers or gunners. Yeah. But he really wanted to be a pilot. Yeah. So they thought, all right, let's go one more time and so see what happens. That was their second.
Because it is random. So they give you a card, and that card turns out, like, tells you your role. Yeah. So you don't know. I was actually secretly afterwards glad he was pilot, because I'm not. I think I would have crashed. So I'm like, the 10-year-old is almost certainly best capable of getting it through
the reflexes.
Played more video games. Like, dude, you've got this. Yeah. But I definitely allocate some more time. But it would also be super cool if you went in a group. So if you are a big fan and you have mates that love this stuff, go as 6 of you. Yeah. Because they will let you go in as a group, and then you are all together fighting, in the resistance. Yeah. So, which was super cool. There was another ride that surprised us, actually, that was vaguely Star Wars-y, the Hyperspace Mountain one.
Yes.
So I think we came across that a bit accidentally, didn't we? It wasn't quite on our radar.
We had seen it day one. And it was in the Tomorrowland, where we actually accidentally bumped into Chewbacca.
Yeah.
And we walked past it and noticed that there was a long wait for entry. So we thought, all right, we'll maybe plan to come on to this one tomorrow, come earlier. Yeah. So I think we did that, or by the time we registered, we were on at the end of the day. So it ended up being almost one of the last things we did over the course of the 2 days.
It was, actually. Yeah,
and we'd been to Galaxy's Edge already.
Yep.
And I remember thinking, this can't top the Millennium Falcon. No. This will be a bit of a fizzer. Yeah. It'll be a bit of a letdown in comparison, because it's been there a while, right? Yes. But actually, I think my worst year we got off was, shit, I think I need a cigarette.
Yeah. So this
was quite unexpected.
This was an old school roller coaster. Inside a sort of virtual 3D so things flying at you, pitch black. Yep. The whole time, so you don't know where you're going at any point. Yeah. You are thrown around a fair bit, and it's fast.
It's full on.
Really fast.
It goes from sort of not much to then all in, like all over the place. And you don't know what's coming next, so which way you're going to turn and spin. And
2 guys, big burly sort of guys, sat in front of us in the little carty thing we're in, and I felt like we needed to apologise afterwards, because we were screaming the whole ride. Like, there was no let up. Like,
intense.
It was really intense.
And so what it was, to set the scene, was you were in a, what do they call it? Is it Starfighter?
Yeah.
No, yeah, Starfighter. So you've gone onto the main ship, the mothership.
Yep.
And they're, quick, we're being on track, quick, off you go. And, your mission is to get out there and basically like dogfight. Yeah. And so that's what it was. Next thing, you're taken off, you're put through this tunnel and into this thing, and off you go.
You do the hyperspace thing with the lights, and then you're in a dogfight. And things are flying at you. And
it was cool.
It was
super cool.
To me, and honestly, I don't think my heart it didn't slow down for some time. Like this
afterwards.
is, So it's, whereas the Smuggler's Run, the Millennium Falcon thing was awesome and fun.
Yeah.
This Hyperspace Mountain was just relentless. Yeah. This was an attack on the senses.
Yeah.
Nuts. And so it's actually a pretty awesome 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
But they are in different spaces, so they haven't put all the Star Wars stuff together. The reason being they didn't have a Star Wars land originally. They were put it in Tomorrowland, which is this sort of vague area. I think they're going to have to change the name, to be honest, because it's sort of not relevant. No. You know, Tomorrowland in the 1950s was robots and all of that, and that makes sense.
And it had a little bit of a Jetsons
100%
feel about it.
100%.
But hadn't, then kind of caught up. Or,
past that, yeah. So, funnily enough, Tomorrowland also has the Buzz Lightyear ride you mentioned, which is just geeky and fun. So cute. Isn't it? Just childish and silly. Yeah. And basically you need to shoot things down. So, once again, you are interacting with the ride, which is cool. You know, I think it's really fun to be doing stuff and getting a score and, you know, all those sort of things. Yeah. And they take a ridiculous photo of you and you've always got a silly look on your face. Like, it just meets all the highlights that you might need from such a thing. I would say, though, one thing that surprised me about Disneyland was how cool we found the old rides.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, one that I think, and I don't think you knew this either, but a lot of people don't realise is, so the Pirates of the Caribbean is a ride there, and it's one of the early rides. And the ride predated the movies. So they actually made the movies because of how popular the ride was.
Right, yeah, I did not know that.
No, it is cool. And what's funny now is to go through this old ride. I mean, it's as sedate and calm as you could. You're sort of in a little riverboat, right? And we're sort of plodding along and exactly, and off you go. But it's Pirates of the Caribbean and it's meant to be swashbuckling, and I guess there is some over there.
Yeah.
But it actually, I mean, you could meditate.
Yeah, it is kind of tame. It's quaint. And I think what's cute about it now is that it's just one of the old ones, like old school, and it's quaint, and it's a bit underground and goes through the back of a restaurant, which looked delightful, by the way.
It did, yeah. Really
like
nice.
This sort of a bit like the Venetian in the casino in Las Vegas, which is indoors pretending to be outdoors by the canal and through a piazza sort of thing. And the sky changes colour. I mean, the ceiling changes colour to pretend that it's going from daylight to nighttime, and it's all very surreal.
Exactly.
But this reminded me of that, right? Yeah. So it's this sort of trying to be outdoors thing, but it's indoors.
Yeah.
But it was very cute.
It was cute. The one, though, I think would win our cute and unexpected award is a experience. It's not a ride. It's an experience that I think most people these days would walk past unless you're a massive fan of historical Disney.
Yep.
And we almost did too. And then I think we had a gap of time. We were waiting for something else for our next ride.
Correct. Or exactly.
Our next booked ride.
And we happened to walk past and we saw this thing, show in, whatever time. I was like, that's in 10 minutes.
Let's do that.
A show? We haven't seen a show yet.
And we can just chill for a bit. The day's a bit exhausting.
Exactly.
And so the place was called the Enchanted Tiki Room. And it's a sort of pseudo-Polynesian room. It's seats around the outside, something. When you walk in, there's almost like a water feature in the middle. And what occurs when they start the show is the birds and other animals start singing.
Life.
Yes. Animatronic. It was the first of its kind and started all of this animatronic stuff going forward. And it is both the most enjoyable and disturbing thing I think I've ever seen in my life. It's so bizarre. The song they were singing was sort of earwormy, strange and funny.
So it was just
hilarious. And what was funny too is it was like we were the only ones that knew the Emperor had no clothes. So there was like young families who clearly knew what this was, arms around each other, singing, swaying from side to side. If they could have lit a little lighter, they would have. This was a happy family moment. Whereas to us, it was like, I feel like perhaps you'd be better stoned to experience this. Like, oh my goodness.
Well, it did feel like everyone in the room knew what they were getting into, and we were just the novices who had no
the aliens, definitely.
And we just found it hysterical. It was not ridiculous. It was actually really entertaining and really well done. And really well done.
Yeah. But just bizarre, just offbeat and bizarre.
Completely unexpected,
So funny. So I would add that to your list too. And
it's a must do.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Now there's so much we could cover, but in the interest of time, I will add some other tips that we've come up with that we had talked about later.
Yep.
But I wanted to basically capture from you, so that we all get to know Liselle a bit better, what you wanted to be when you grow up.
Ooh.
Not now what you want to be when you grow up, because hopefully you grew up. When you were little. When you were little and you'd imagine. Right. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, so interestingly enough, just to digress for 1 second, one of my earliest memories of being little was playing with my Star Wars figurines in the mud. In my preschool playground, it had been raining and the sun had come out, and we were allowed to go out and play. And there were these little kind of mud puddles. And my friends and I had 3 best friends, Christian, Paul and Hadley. I was a tomboy from a very early age. And we all had our different little Star Wars figurines. We were all in love with the film. Came out the year I was born. Yep. And so I'm not even sure if I'd seen it, but we were obsessed with everything Star Wars. And we used to play, with our little Star Wars figurines. So that's how long I've been a fan. But yes, certainly there was a theme, I think. If I think back to all of the things that over kind of from age 5 to age 15 that I kind of wanted to do. There's anything from being a police woman, being a school teacher, being a forensic psychologist. Nice. And I guess the recurring theme here is wanting to help people. People, I've done a lot of volunteer, well, not a lot, but I've done over the years varying things to volunteer and just help people, with less than I have. And so I suppose I've always been a very empathetic person and wanting to sort of help other people, particularly those who are not having the best experience in life at the time.
Like Luke saving the galaxy, right?
I guess so. There's the connection. There you go.
And what about in the future? What would you, if there's an adventure in your future that's a bit far off, a bit hard to reach, is there something that you'd love to do if you got $1 million, or if life changed and you could? Is there something that secretly you'd love to experience? Do or learn? Could be anything.
Yeah. Look, I feel like this is that moment where someone says, I'd run off and join the circus. Or
I've had one close, actually. We had be in a Broadway musical.
Oh, yeah. Cool.
I thought she meant generally in a musical, but no, Valerie, Broadway.
Yeah.
Go big or go home.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, while we're talking dreams.
Exactly. You've got to own it. Doesn't
have to be realistic. Well, okay, fine. So I thought you actually meant something I could achieve.
Not necessarily.
So look, I was a ballet dancer as a child. Ballet, tap, jazz, Irish dancing in there too, randomly. And I loved all that. And I had to stop, unfortunately, because of a back injury. But I took my best friend and her daughter to the Nutcracker by the Australian Ballet the other night at the Opera House, and it was magnificent. And I enjoyed it, but it also made me sad. Yeah. Because all I ever really wanted to do, actually, once I started learning ballet and realizing I wasn't too bad at it, was to be in the Australian Ballet.
Wow.
To be a ballerina. So that was a bittersweet experience, because it just sort of made me realize how much I missed it. So look, if I could do anything and if reality wasn't an issue, I'd be a ballerina.
Nice. I love that. It's much the same as when we're small. I love the continued one.
Yeah,
that's
really,
fantastic.
And to this day, I love to dance. Be that on a dance floor of a nightclub or whatever, pub or whatever it is, but
top of the bar, whatever.
Yeah. Hey, don't judge. But yeah, so dance is just always. And movement has always been a part of my life. Yeah, cool. I feel like I can't breathe if I can't dance.
Yeah, me too. Well, that was a cracker. Thank you very much for sharing.
Thank you.
We could talk about this for hours and hours and hours, because we were there in Disneyland for hours and hours and hours, I might add.
Oh, yeah.
What I will do is make sure that we give a whole lot of our tips for those of you that are serious about doing this, because we did collect a few things as we went, including a great and real coffee place. So I'll make sure to share that too.
Absolutely.
But in the interest of time, thank you so much,
thank you
Liselle,
very
for joining
much for
me.
having
And I reckon there's probably another theme park in our future.
I think so too.
Maybe in another country.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, you too, darling. Wow, there is honestly so much we could share about our Disneyland visit. In fact, so much so that we're actually going to be putting together a blog post for you with more detail that we'll release in the new year, so that those of you seriously looking into this trip We'll have all our best tips, hints, do's and don'ts. But something that did stand out for me about the 2 days in Disneyland is that some of our most magical moments were when we checked out the less obvious thing, the less well-known thing. And were in fact things that we came across quite by accident. And I think this is where our action hero curiosity can really come into play. And so I would encourage you, with any of these types of adventures, to make sure you've left enough time for the things you could never expect. We can over-engineer some of these things. So make sure that you give a bit of leeway time so that you can wander down that little laneway and discover that magical thing. Now, if our adventure inspired you particularly, then do head over to the show notes where we will drop in some links to all things Disneyland and Galaxy's Edge. And once we release the blog, we'll make sure to include a link in those show notes to that further detail, along with all of Liselle's appropriate socials, so you can follow on with her varied adventures into the future. And if you enjoyed the interview and want to know about new ones as they go live, then please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favourite platform. Now, up next in our action tip segment, the wonderful Hayley Pearce and I will share some tips on researching your next adventure with my experience from Disneyland fresh in our minds. So, Hayley, lovely to have you on again.
Yay!
I was just chatting to Liselle, and she and I were sharing our wonderful adventure to Disneyland where we got to go to Galaxy's Edge.
I'm so jealous.
Oh, it was so much fun. And I could talk on it for hours and hours and hours, but one of the things that stood out to me was we had such a short period of time to do a whole lot of stuff we wanted to do. And had we not done research beforehand, I think we would have come asunder. And in fact, we'd probably both argue we could have done more research before we went.
Right.
So I thought it'd be worth just chatting about the fact that we probably view when we do any of these adventures, whether it's travel or not, that it's like we're the first ones to ever do it.
Yeah.
And we just sort of assume, well, we'll just, when we get there, we'll work it out. Yeah. And no big deal. And is there worth in doing any research? Whereas the internet, dead set.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has a lot of info.
It's your shortcut. It is your emergency backup plan. It's your how do I get there? How do I get out of here?
Correct.
That's the thing that makes the experience, or can make the experience, so much more enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Less of a headache. So
and actually giving you things to make sure you don't do. Sometimes your research is more about narrowing something down than anything else. So, avoid this. So for me, in Disneyland, someone was to say to me, what things shouldn't I do? Like if I want to take something off, like don't do It's a Small World ride. It's creepy as hell. Right? So that's my, and it's taking something off your list. And so often the first level of research to me, and of course, Google is wonderful at this and all of the blogs on a topic. You could literally search if you guys all try that now, a blog on Disneyland, I guarantee you there's about 4,000 of them.
Yeah.
Then that can actually sort of get you started, right? Okay. So they're saying I need this much time, or this is how much it costs. So it's that very high level sort of generic research, and it's a great start, and it helps reduce surprises.
Yeah.
And that
Especially
happens when we travel.
So many different experiences can help you fine-tune what you want your experience to look like.
Yes, because we've all got a different take on that, right?
And it also then helps you once you're on your adventure and it comes down to making a decision, say you're a bit behind on time or you've got to change the plans, it helps you then weigh up what that snap decision looks like because you've done your research and you go, you know what, I'm actually happy to trade that thing there for this experience over here because I've done my research.
Exactly.
And it makes it easier.
Exactly. So there's sort of that, I guess the first level of research to me is generic, that's Google, blogs, podcasts, right?
Yeah.
So these people don't know you. It's just that general information. But like you say, it's really sort of getting to the point so that either you can set a bit of an itinerary, so that can be a great start, or like you say, you can have that info in your back pocket to go, oh, okay, we've either discovered some extra time or we've run out of time. How are we going to adjust? So that's really helpful. The other thing I think, though, that there's two other areas I think people don't tap into enough. First, big places like this have apps. Like they literally have a thing on your phone that you can play with before you get there, tag things, and then use that on the day.
Yeah.
And I'm stunned how many people are unaware of that when they go to places.
I think even using like Instagram. Instagram is Google Images. It's the photo snapshot of what that bit looks like. So if you're someone that needs accessibility to a place, you can look that stuff up on Google. And I think you've spoken previously, we've talked about using Google Maps more when it comes to finding places. Leave reviews so that other people can then build
Learn
their
from
adventure.
your experience. Exactly.
Yeah, I know for myself, being with helping Finance Action Heroes, looking at different apps that can help people. I've looked at thousands of budgeting and cash flow apps. And one mistake I made quite early on was looking at 20 of them and finding that the 21st one was a really good one. But then once I got into using it, it wasn't so good. So I'd start looking again, but I'd start looking at the ones I'd already looked at and fall in love with those ones again, but not realizing there were reasons that I didn't like them in the first place. I didn't keep track of why I didn't go with those options. And it made the process take longer.
Correct.
And I didn't use that information to go back to the app provider and say, hey, this is a tweak that you could maybe do to help other people.
Correct. So giving feedback is rating somewhere you've been, but also giving feedback is fundamental because you'll take advantage of that in the future. I completely agree. And the other point you're making there, which is a really good one, is as you are researching this stuff, having a place to put it.
Yes.
So if you're anything like me, you end up with 47 tabs open on Internet Explorer or something that you can't get rid of, right? Because you're like, yeah, but that was that thing. So I'd encourage a great one we've used a lot, and we encourage you even to have your dream list on, is Trello. Yep. Trello, and you could have a board just for one of these big adventures and you could just start dragging stuff in there as you collect it. You know, don't even worry about it too much. Just put it all on there.
Yeah.
And then as you do more digging, you could start building a little itinerary of the way you wanted, say, the day to go or the rides you wanted to go on if it's a theme park. Or it's a great place to do that stuff and it's really visual. So I would encourage you. We've got one. We're going on a trip in January and I've started a Trello board for it. And I'm just dragging things I come across, a blog or, like you say, an Instagram photo that somebody's been to a place I loved. You know, I take a screenshot and I put it in there. And it's really interesting you talk about Instagram because visual mediums are so valuable for this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not Disneyland saying, isn't this awesome? It's somebody who's been there, taken the photo, telling you it's awesome. And it has more weight.
It does. It also has the ability, though, to maybe hinder what your expectations are.
Potentially.
Because obviously it's got a filter, there's all these sorts of things, and you're like, oh, the sky isn't as blue today, I wonder why. So it's important to take it for what it is.
Yep.
And understand that, some of these photos, people might have waited 8 hours in line to get that one shot that looks perfect.
Yes.
But definitely social media. I mean, putting a post on your Facebook page to say, hey, has anyone been here? I'd love to chat.
100%.
It's such a good way. But it's important to know, like whenever you ask for constructive criticism or feedback or someone's honest thoughts and opinions, take it with a grain of salt. Because
I completely
it's your
agree.
experience and not theirs, and it can be hard because you still want, whilst it's good to plan, you want to be able to be a bit spontaneous and go with the flow and not let other people's thoughts and opinions weigh on your experience.
Correct.
It's just important to take it on board if you think it will help.
Correct. And I have to admit, that was sort of my final layer of research I think is really valuable, is your circle of friends and family.
Yeah.
But particularly, like you say, first of all, they know you. So I think that helps because they sort of have seen you experience maybe something similar. But you're right, asking the question with context.
Yes.
So you know that I love Star Wars. I'm looking at going to Galaxy's Edge at Disneyland. Does anybody have any, be specific? Because otherwise you get the answer, well, Star Wars, stupid. Why would you want to do that? It's like, whereas if you give it context, exactly. It's so helpful. But you're right. If you give it context, then that helps. And also I find it really interesting with questions we ask on something like, say, Facebook. I'm surprised how many people get an answer and then don't interact about that answer. Like, to me, the minute you get an answer, ask that
Dig
person
deeper.
another question. Yeah.
Give
Because
the
depth is where the juice really is.
The annoying toddler syndrome.
Yes.
Where it's just, but why? Why should I do that? Why? You're exactly right. Keep digging deeper. Keep asking questions.
Correct. And so I think definitely using Facebook or social media generally as a call out can get you some really quick answers, because you're just not going to see I don't know how many people each of us have on Facebook. You're not going to interact with all those people before you go on whatever adventure you're going to go on.
Yeah.
It's a great way to do that. And that's actually happened to me recently, some friends going to Disneyland at the end of the year. And so they're like, they did the call out, and I instantly came back with a whole lot of things, as suggestions. They're taking it a little girl, and so I'm like, yep, here's some great tips, and so I think but giving it context and asking it that way. The other place I'd say that I know we are a part of on Facebook, but I think lots of people don't take advantage of our Facebook groups.
Yeah.
So when you post on your feed, of course, your friends see stuff, but in groups, there's a whole lot of people that aren't your friends on Facebook who see things. And groups are interesting because often they're people that are similar to you in some way. Maybe you love romance books, or maybe, might be like you love skiing, whatever the thing is. And so actually they can often be really helpful as a connector to get some feedback. So not just posting into your feed, but actually asking the question in groups, even random groups. It could be a business group, and just say, look, I don't want to interrupt the feed too much, but I just have this question. Has anybody been to, direct message me if you've got any suggestions. And
even after say it's going on a holiday or, a particular experience, if you've gotten advice from someone, tap back into that resource and either thank them or comment as to whether their advice helped you or not.
Definitely. And tagging them.
Yeah.
You do, if you post something while you're there, tag them, thank you so-and-so for, giving us this tip about it. People love to get that sort of feedback. It makes them feel good. And we are grateful for people's help, definitely. And we probably don't do that enough. We probably don't give kudos back enough to people. I completely agree.
I guess people are happy to talk about, and maybe online it's different, but if you're catching up with a group of people for coffee or Christmas parties, whatever it might be, people are happy to talk about, we had an amazing time, we did this. People don't always talk about, we had to wait forever to get on the bus, and then the bus was slow, and not always do people talk about that stuff when they're catching up about a holiday. So it's important to dig deeper and ask questions.
It is one of the questions that I'd encourage any of you to use when you're sort of asking is, what's the thing people wouldn't know about?
Yeah.
So what wouldn't they know about, say, visiting Disneyland, or what wouldn't they know about, say, even visiting the States, whatever it is. And, the sort of way, for that in particular, so being in Anaheim and going to Disneyland, the thing they won't know is it's hard to get good coffee as an Australian, right? So we discovered a place not far from Disneyland where you could get coffee and normal bread, not sweet bread with just avocado on toast or whatever.
Yeah.
And so it's like asking those questions, and you're right, it can massively enhance the whole experience.
Yeah.
If you just sort of keep on asking more questions. The other thing I'd say too is that tools like TripAdvisor, like people will go there for a location, Melbourne, Spain, Iceland, but they're actually really good for experiences. So lots of people will put in, things like, hey, I did the ghost tour in the rocks, or I went to this gallery, or, these little places. They're in TripAdvisor too. And I find people are much blunter.
Yeah. And
their photos are generally unfiltered.
Yes.
So it can be a really good place to get a really good sense.
And that's even to push it further, call the place that you want to go to.
Yes.
Call the provider. So if you want to learn swing dancing and you found a place, give them a buzz and say, hey, I'm really thinking of giving this a go. I've never done it before. What's something that might surprise me? What's something I wouldn't be prepared for? And they'll say something like, you're going to get blisters.
Yeah.
Don't plan a hike the next day.
Go to the pub first. You'll need
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Or even calling them up and say, hey, is there someone else that has had a first time there that I can chat to?
Exactly.
Just don't be afraid to reach out to the place that you're going to for feedback. Whether
Definitely.
It's a business, it's, an independent person, reach out.
It's such a good point. We actually, I'd love to say it was with intent. It was quite accidental. Did that with Disneyland before we arrived because we knew we didn't have long. So we were ringing to say, look, what time should we get there to sort of, run through the gates as they open? And this lady was so helpful. And of course, they always are going to be, right, at these places, and gave us all sorts of tips, places to go to first, places to go to second. It was so valuable. And how funny that the last thing we think of, we've just been chatting for a long time. The last thing we think of is picking up the phone.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I don't have to talk to a human. What?
But it will get you the really nuanced and insightful information.
Yeah.
It will. And so, making that just par for the course, I think on the list would make such a difference. But yeah, there's so many people out there that have done all of these things. And I would challenge you, listener out there, to, send us a message if you reckon you've got something that you couldn't research, there wouldn't be a blog, there wouldn't be a podcast, it wouldn't be on TripAdvisor. Please ask, because I reckon we'll find you something. Because it's just, there's so many of us out there experiencing and doing. I just know there's more information there. And just sometimes it's because you need to know somebody who knows somebody.
Being in different circles.
Exactly. So, look, I'm hoping that that's helpful. We have been summarising these tips and putting them on the Instagram page in a little carousel. So feel free to head over to @InSearchOfAdventure Show on the Instagram, because you'll see that we summarise them well for you and you can sort of check them out. And we sometimes put some extra little tips there. But hopefully that'll encourage you to both A, do more research, and B, head to Disneyland.
Yay!
Thanks, Hayley.
Thanks.
I'm hoping our chats so far have got you all revved up to head out and start living life like an action hero. If that's the case, I'd really encourage you to head over to the Adventure Club Room, which is our private Facebook group and is basically a support group for action heroes in training just like you. The link to the group is in the show notes, or you can simply search for Adventure Club Room in Facebook. Next up is our Popcorn Adventures segment, where we take a pivot, from our everyday action heroes like Liselle, and look to fictional action heroes in movies to see if maybe they inspire any dreams we might have forgotten to add to our list. And, we'll debate whether they in fact measure up as action heroes at all. Our movie today is a brand new release and the final installment of a 9-part series that has basically spanned my entire life to date. The movie I'm referring to is Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker.
We've passed on all we know. 1,000 generations live in you now. But this is your fight. Be with you. No one's ever really gone.
Well, that was the trailer for Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, which was released yesterday. Actually, so is not the few years old movie like we normally have on the show. The movie was directed by J.J. Abrams, which we will talk about later. But I'd love to, before we kick off, welcome my Jedi sister, Naomi Christopher. Hello.
Thank you for having me on.
No worries. Now, Naomi and a few of us actually went and saw the show at 12:01 the day it released, which was technically yesterday. It feels like longer than that ago.
It does, doesn't it? Well, the Christmas season does feel like that by the end, I think.
Yeah, and the lack of sleep probably makes it all feel a bit longer too. Yeah. So poor Naomi had to head almost right into work straight after watching the movie. So she did. The hardcore Star Wars fans here, folks. So let me read the IMDb summary for those of you that have no idea what we're talking about here. This is the last movie in the sort of series of 9, and IMDb describes it, it's really a hopeless description. The surviving resistance faces the First Order once more in the final chapter of the Skywalker saga, which tells you nothing, really. Yeah. So if you didn't know anything about it, that would be...
Yeah, that doesn't help you a whole lot.
Not at all. The movie runs for 2 hours and 21 minutes, so it's not... Well, I guess that is a little long. It didn't feel long. Did it feel long to you?
No, it didn't feel that long. I remember seeing that it ran for that long and thinking, oof. But you know, knowing that it was going to be the last one and having all of that excitement, I felt like, well, yeah, they need that amount of time to resolve everything. So it felt fair to me. That's
fair enough. That's fair enough. Now, what we're going to try and do is be spoiler-free here, recognising this is very new. It's only just been released. When this episode lands, it will be Boxing Day. It'll only be a week old. We will try. However, if you are a massive Star Wars fan, I would recommend hitting pause on this episode, watching the movie and come back, because it is easy to give accidental spoilers if you're a super fan, like something that could be a little hint may tell you a lot. So I would suggest if you're a huge fan, come back and listen to this later. But aside from that, we'll try. So we won't give away anything too much.
And if you're a huge fan, you should have watched it already.
Exactly.
This goes out.
Hardcore. It's already been watched. It's 24 hours in, folks. Yeah. I completely agree. And this review is actually inspired by the fact that the adventure that we've just heard about in the episode was Liselle and I visiting Galaxy's Edge in Disneyland. And so this is a wonderful little connector to be able to review this movie, you know, as part of the episode. So this is exciting. So now I want to start with your first impression. Like, movie's done. Naomi, how did you feel? What did you think?
I think I remember saying to you, turning around and saying, well, I feel a little bit emotional.
Did they just break up with me? Yeah.
That's it. I feel like I'm going to need the rest of the night to process this.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it was only another 3 hours till morning anyway, so that was okay. So, I felt emotional, but I felt happy. I did feel happy. I didn't walk away feeling like they
aggravated or yeah. I have to admit, my first impression was exhaustion.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, dude. Like,
yeah.
You know, I need a smoke. Not that I smoke, but I feel like I need a smoke.
Yep.
Now, interestingly, we always share the Rotten Tomatoes scores for movies. And, of course, for most of the movies we review, they can be 10, 20, even 30 years old. And so the Rotten Tomatoes are sort of settled by that point, you know, like it's got some time. So I'm going to just give that context because the Rotten Tomatoes for The Rise of Skywalker are not great. It is sitting at 57%.
Yeah, wow.
Now, for those of you who don't follow Rotten Tomatoes, and look, I'm not a big fan of measuring whether I see a movie or not by these things, but I find it just interesting in the relativity. So the first one of this sort of little series of 3, Force Awakens, is at 93%, and The Last Jedi is at 91%.
Oh, wow.
So that's interesting. And even more interesting, wait for this one, the only one worse in the entire series is Phantom Menace.
I knew this was coming. Oh my God.
Which I have to say, I'm surprised that's where it's sitting. I don't think it's worthy of that. I don't think that's a worthy.
No, I don't agree with that. I don't agree. No, I definitely don't agree with that. Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it? So I think, off air we were sort of joking about, you know, rabid Star Wars fans. And I think this is a reflection of that. So it's a reflection of you didn't perhaps give us exactly what we wanted, or, you know, that sort of thing. Or a little bit of the reverse where I wonder whether he gave us too much of what we might have wanted, and therefore the cinematic element probably got sort of let down a little. So we'll go through that and just sort of work through, why this might not be might be the case. But I think, it hit some highlights. There's some stuff you'd normally expect in a great Star Wars movie, right? So lightsaber battles.
Yeah. Good old-fashioned battle.
Exactly, right. And particularly, dogfighting, there was that sort of stuff that they always have. There was even better, one-on-one lightsaber duel thing. I actually think it was possibly one of the best.
Yeah, I would have to agree.
Right, so that was really clever.
Most chilling, wasn't it? I had goosebumps during that one.
Yes, so that was really well done. So it had that. It had, cute aliens and cute droids. That sort of. That's
true. It had its usual Star Wars one-liner humour.
Yes, correct.
Intersperse the drama.
Correct.
Actually, as a writer, I thought the script was really good.
Yeah, so
I noticed the script. And
I did too. I thought that was really well done. I think what the one thing I'd say that I think let it down, and I actually think this is where people are coming from, is I don't think it let moments settle. And that's a director thing. That's not a script thing. No. That's that moment where you just let it sit. And in The Last Jedi, he did that beautiful. Rian Johnson, I think his name is, the director. He did that where there's just this intense moment and he just would hold it. And you sort of really marinate in it. And I feel like actually this was the reverse, like something intense had happened and then bang, next thing, Yeah,
actually, I didn't notice it at the time, but I think I have to agree with you. I did remember feeling on edge. Sitting, even though we were in, those beautiful recliner chairs, I was sitting grabbing both my elbows the entire time.
Yes.
So, I agree. Maybe they were trying to squeeze a lot of drama into 2 hours, 20 minutes.
And that's the thing when you think about, and when I thought about that some more, I'm like, okay, what could be an accidental reason that happens? Because sometimes these things happen not out of intent, right? Now, J.J. Abrams is a bit like this. He is a bit frenetic with stuff. He's done the new Star Trek ones and it is a bit bang, 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 right? So he's sort of known for that. But he does understand those emotional moments. I've seen him do it before. And what I cottoned on to, so everybody knows that Carrie Fisher wasn't, passed away before all of this could happen. And so Princess Leia's moments are generally cobbled together previous footage and stuff like that. So they've tried to, and I'm guessing some CG. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So when you think about the other movies, nearly all of the really deep moments are Leia moments.
Oh, 100%. She's the heart.
Right.
Right. She has that heart. So if we're missing her big thumping heart,
right,
movie, I actually, that's a really good point.
So I wonder, so she is there, so guys, don't freak out like Leia's in the movie, but I wonder if the actress can't, because it's really the actress that brings the heart. It's not just the character. And so.
And Carrie Fisher was that.
Right.
Heart. I mean, I've seen interviews with the rest of the characters talking about like their favourite Carrie Fisher moment, and really see, I think, even Daisy says that really long hug that they have in the first movie together. She whispered in her ear during the cut, "This is a really long effing hug."
Of course she did.
And she just brought that humour and love into the set. And I really do miss that kind of presence.
Yeah, and I think so. And I think if you had a little, and clearly they can't do that, and I'm completely empathetic to that. But if you had that, I think it would give it more light and shade too. So I think it just got all a bit. It actually felt a little bit. It's funny. So when we were in Galaxy's Edge, we went on a ride in Tomorrowland that was sort of loosely based on Star Wars, but it was just this crazy roller coaster ride. One of those ones that just goes. So there's no build up. It's just relentless, and you sort of get off and you're like, "Whew, okay."
Did I enjoy that?
Right. I'm not sure. And I have to admit, I think this movie feels a bit like that. Like crazy, exciting, awesome, but just and done and oh my goodness.
And that's why I felt like I needed the rest of the night to actually process what happened.
Yes. And even remember what happens, which is an interesting test for a movie too for me. So when I think back to The Last Jedi, and look, people are a bit extreme with that movie. They either love or hate it. But there's iconic moments I could describe in detail even now. You know, like they really, like I can see them.
Yeah.
Whereas before we sort of got online, as I was sort of thinking about this, I really had to think hard about the steps in the movie.
Yes. No, I actually was the same. And there's only really a few moments that grabbed me, and
Yes.
I don't want to spoil it by saying what they are.
They are, yeah.
But usually they were those few moments in the movie where it slowed down for a minute.
Yes. You know, and to me, actually, the big win for me, or the big tick, was Rey and Kylo Ren.
Me too.
So the interaction.
Okay, so we're together on this.
Right. So I actually think that's the saving grace. And to be frank, I think Adam Driver is the MVP of this movie.
Mm-hmm.
He
without a doubt.
Yeah. Yep. He nails it. Don't get me wrong, Daisy's great.
Yeah.
But the arc he goes through, he nails. And that's hard to do. A really well done baddie is hard.
Oh, totally. And also, you know, just conflict within a character is very hard to portray. And Star Wars usually has these moments where characters are either good or bad.
Yes.
And to sort of have that inner turmoil, character illustrated so well. Yeah. I think he does a brilliant job. I was going to say the same thing. It's all of his moments on screen that are the most memorable for me in this.
Yeah, and quite varied. All sorts of things. You're not going to know what's coming. So it's
that's it.
You can't possibly predict how it goes, but beautifully handled. And he has, for somebody who has quite a still face, it's very expressive.
That's it, yes.
So I actually think, you know, and I guess maybe that's poetic given that his character is Princess Leia's son. So if we can't have a bit more Carrie Fisher, then, you know, maybe Adam Driver's sort of stepping up to the plate. I don't know. But
you just saying that gave me goosebumps. The legacy lives on. Yeah.
Right, exactly. But I think, you know, and listeners, what I'd say to you is this is not just the emotional bits. It's when they're fighting. It's when they're, you know, even talking about each other. Like they really nail it. And I would actually argue Daisy's performance lifts every time she's interacting with Adam Driver. She just lifts it to another level. Whereas I'm not sure we get that out of her with the rest of the crew. It's fun, but there was something a bit, and I think
genuine chemistry,
right? And that can just power a movie. That stuff. It's interesting. So I had, you know, there's some moments that can just take you out of a movie, and it's not the movie's fault. It's your own brain interpreting something.
Yeah.
So in Days of Our Lives or any of those daytime dramas, there's these moments when they all look off. You know, there'll be a scene and they look off. You know, up into the top right.
Yeah.
Rey does that lots in this movie. And it shouldn't matter because that's the whole Force thing, right? She's sensing the Force. But unfortunately, she does it in a way where all I could think was Days of Our Lives.
Yeah, like a bit, and it feels a little bit corny.
It sort of did. And I'm not sure that's the actress's fault. Like I need to see it again to work that out. But
no, I agree. I mean, I have heard Star Wars referred to as a soap opera in space.
Well, fair enough.
But yeah, no, I agree. I think I wasn't completely held by those. I think she was supposed to be that illustration of the next Luke.
Right.
However, it didn't feel like she was looking inward the same way Luke has in his portrayal of his training.
Yeah.
You know, you get that real sense in the past with the movies with Luke that, you know, there is all the other characters there, but he really does this self-inflection.
Yes.
I'm not sure if I really felt that with Rey.
Yeah.
But perhaps that's because Rey was battling different things, you know. I think Rey was on this search to really know who she was based on who her parents were and and the rest of it.
And I think, I do think if you look at her arc over the three, I'm not sure they've done her justice in that. Like, I think it's sort of the same thing the whole time. And it's like, it sort of needs to evolve. And I think you're right with the original three, not the first three, the original three, Luke's arc does change, you know, over the course of that. I feel a little like Rey's didn't. And I guess, that's, a combo of directing and sort of the broad storyline. They if they applied some magic like they did with Kylo Ren in terms of his arc to hers, I think that would have given it a little more depth. So once again, I'm not convinced it's the actress. I think it's potentially...
I don't think it's Daisy's fault either, actually.
No.
I do kind of agree with you. I just don't think she had the narrative.
She was given enough. Yeah, she just wasn't given enough to do, I think, in that respect. Yeah. I mean, well, and to be fair, this could be a part of the whole frenetic pace. Like, her physicality is incredible. She's doing some fight scenes and some leaping and acrobating and jumping and like climbing and like...
Oh, yeah. And I like one thing I did notice, which I absolutely loved, and what I love about Star Wars in general is, their female heroines aren't made to be these caricatures of female heroines that are like ultra feminine.
Yeah.
And they're not meant to be ultra masculine either. They're just humans.
They're just human. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
And she did that really well.
Yes.
She wasn't stereotyped into a particular kind of hero. She just was her.
Yeah.
And I loved that about her character.
Yeah.
And I love the way that Star Wars writes those kind of characters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I think, and that she, it suited the way for the series to resolve itself very well.
It did. And I think in that sense, I think it does wrap up a lot of things.
Yeah.
There's some emotional moments it wraps up nicely. And I think, it sort of does close off some stories. There's a couple of close-offs I'm not sure I understand. There was a thing at the end with one of the characters I love dearly that I'm not sure I understood right at the end, but I'm going to go back again because I think I might have been just so exhausted at that point I wasn't concentrating.
Oh, no, I'm with you. Yeah, I definitely need to. I was thinking yesterday, I'm going to go back and watch it again. I might go 10 a.m.
Yes. Peak full brain V8 power time.
Right after a coffee.
So we can actually concentrate. I can't believe
it.
It's so funny. And I think in wrapping it up, though, I think there was an element of, a character that was sort of, I mean, it has been around, but sort of introduced in this that I think I get why, but I wonder if it overcomplicated it. Like, I wonder if it actually added in so much complexity into what needed to happen and who was doing what, that maybe that's a challenge. It's sort of one of the baddies. And I just think maybe it was all just getting a bit ridiculous at that point. So, and I think it's interesting when I look at the previous one, the thing that did disappoint me a little, and I'm going to try not to get into spoilers here, what I loved about The Last Jedi was that there was sort of this theme that said anybody can use the Force, anybody can have Jedi powers. There was this message that, and there was the scene of the kid, sort of brushing right at the end, and he's sort of using the Force powers, and I'm like, and so anybody can take part or contribute or sort of.
It was inclusive, yeah.
Right, and for us, on the show, it's like, well, anybody can live a big adventure. So I really liked that. And they sort of, because of what happened with the story arc, they sort of unwound that.
Oh, 100%.
Right.
They very much turned it into what I kind of saw as almost biblical.
Right.
The idea of
Correct.
Certain people having powers or certain people having to be the savior.
Correct.
And being chosen.
Yes, and this being part of your 100%.
Like a glory, almost worship of certain heroes, and and so I thought that was if anything that I could have chosen differently, I think it'd probably be that, because I think the story, like the messaging that they could have carried through would have been wonderful. But I get it, because it wraps up all sorts of things and incorporates all sorts of previous stuff, and I get it. But I feel like J.J. Abrams does have a tendency to do some fan service, and I think this was fan service. Yeah.
And so I'm like,
didn't necessarily work.
No, I think if you got somebody cold to Star Wars, that's not how they would have written it. So that would be one thing I think for me. I mean, I really love J.J. Abrams as a director. But one thing I did notice, have you watched any of the new Star Trek movies?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so what's interesting is when he did the first one of those, he got judged a lot because they said, well, it feels more like a Star Wars, because he loves Star Wars, right? Which is interesting. Okay. And I think it's the third Star Trek he did, there was, and this is a few years ago, right? There was this thing where they were jumping through what was like light speed skipping that happened in this latest movie.
Okay.
So I saw what looked like a brand new Star Wars concept of light speed skipping. I'm like, That's from Star Trek Into Darkness. Like J.J. Abrams, what are you
creativity
doing? Right.
linking into all his different spots.
Right. And I think that it's that sort of stuff. Actually, I'll be really curious about how the fans react to that, because anybody that's across both, I'm sure, we'll see the similarities. Now, that doesn't matter.
Copied homework from one subject to another.
Yeah, and I actually wasn't convinced that and that happens right at the beginning. So we're not giving anything away here, folks. It's literally right at the beginning, and it's sort of a random thing. It's not a key plot point, but it actually didn't feel Star Wars. Like Star Wars is often that zoom and then off we get. Like it's this cruisy sort of movement. Exactly. Whereas this was a bit frenetic and jumpy, and so I think that sort of started the tone. Yeah. Of the rest. So now I don't want anybody to think that I didn't love the movie. I really enjoyed it. This is fun.
Yeah, so did I. Yeah, this is just me picking the tiniest things I can that might perhaps have been what I expected. But I try not to have expectations with this stuff anymore, because I think that's like when you talk about why the Rotten Tomatoes rating is so low, and why some fans might be panning it is that they go in with these massive expectations of what it should be, right? And then they're disappointed when it doesn't match that. So if you can kind of go in with a clear slate, I know it's hard when you're a diehard fan. Yes. But you kind of just can come out and be like, okay, well, I enjoyed it. Did I enjoy myself? Yes.
Correct. And I think that's the first measure. Did I enjoy it? Absolutely. Throughout so when the movie started, I'm doing the hand clap, like the excited, like, ooh, so Nick was sitting next to me, Mr. D, and he's just rolling his eyes like, really? So I was already excited. And there were frequent moments during the movie I'm like, whoa, and woo, and or laughter. There was a little character they've introduced that I thought was hysterical. That was an alien. Very funny. So like it's pure enjoyment. But I think when you then step back and sort of look, as a piece of art effectively, like something, it's a piece of cinema, I think that's where actually probably there'll be certainly some reviewer sort of commentary that'll be like, no, maybe it's not. Now, does Star Wars need to be a great piece of art? Probably not. Not that type of movie. So it's not really fair to judge it that way. But yeah, it's definitely fun. Definitely, it's worth your 2 hours, 21 minutes. You'll have a great time. A couple of tips though. One tip I would give, if you are going with a partner who loves Star Wars and you have no idea what's going on, you need to watch the previous 2 new movies. You need to watch Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. This is the worst example of it's not its own movie. You're
100%. I cannot agree more, because as someone who has seen all of them several times, I still wished that I had watched the other 2 beforehand. Just
right before.
Re-engaged. Yeah, right before.
Yes.
Because it's probably been about a year. Yeah. Yeah. Since I'd re-engaged, and I was going in cold. Yeah. Again, not completely cold, but I could have been hotter.
Correct. And I think otherwise it'd be rough. Like I think you'd really struggle.
You wouldn't get it.
Nah. So definitely, if you're being the supportive partner, then definitely see the previous 2. The other thing I'd say is if you're taking kids, this has got some dark stuff. And what I mean by early on, there were some scenes that are in the sort of one of the bad places, right? And it felt almost horror-like, like almost that sort of waiting for the awful, scary monster to jump out, sort of horror-like. So I don't know about you, but I really think that you're going to need to think about whether it's right for your kids. So think about the relative ages, because it is not just the dog fights, No,
it's not like a few in the previous series. It feels a little bit cartoonish, the bad parts.
Right.
So it feels safe. Yeah. In this movie, I definitely agree with you. The darkness felt dark.
Yes. Yeah. Adult dark.
So it's not about gore.
No.
Definitely not about that.
No.
It's just about like a
thriller
feeling.
Yeah, 100%.
That kids are kind of a little bit more sensitive to than we can be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, the only one that I can remember being similar to that was was it Empire Strikes Back when Luke goes into the hole under the tree, you know, when so it's not a scene like that. I don't mean that, but it's that horrible, this feels wrong, you know, there's a bit of that. So just as a heads up with the kids, if you're unsure, then reach out or DM me on Instagram at In Search of Adventure Show. Tell me how old your kids are. But I honestly, be careful, because I actually think this could be quite full on. So a little like, I think something like the last Harry Potter movie can get, you know, some of these things get a bit dark, and for some kids that's fine. For others, it's actually, they need to be a bit older. Yeah. Now, something we always do when we do these reviews is talk about any dreams that the movie inspired, anything we're adding to our list. Did you have anything that you think it would, you know, prompt you to add to your list?
It's funny, it didn't so much prompt me to add anything that I didn't already have on my list, but it had moments, which I will try and explain without giving any away, where certain characters were faced with absolutely extreme exhaustion, both physically and mentally.
Yep.
And there was this, like these moments where these characters, it would have been easy for them to just go, give up, and instead found the strength to just pick themselves up again. And I think that to me was quite inspiring, because this year's been a huge year for many of us, and I've struggled to pick up the things that I love doing because I've been busy at life, and the excuse I've given myself is I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So to see these characters still not give up on their dreams, find strength in that exhaustion to do the things you love, because that actually in the end is what powers you and gives you energy anyway.
It does.
Was a real inspiration to me. I felt that sense of you know, and the other thing I felt was that sense of camaraderie that you don't, you know, dreams don't need to be done on their own.
No, not at all. And you're right. You can have your crew with you. You know, you can do these things together. Definitely. Yeah, I completely agree. It's an interesting feeling that actually, I'm not sure we get in many movies anymore, or many of these sort of epic movies. I mean, the one that used to do that sort of battling through thing really well is Die Hard, right? Like he's just like relentless. Like I'm just gonna keep on going, and arms hanging off, and blood's running down his face. But we actually don't get many of those sort of heroes anymore. No. So it's a good point. I really like that point. It's just sort of, and that it can fuel you when you then get to do something you love doing. It can actually give you that energy.
Exactly.
And that's probably where hobbies fall away, you know, where we stop doing something because we don't have time. It's like, actually, that's probably the moment we should do things.
Exactly.
Because it can help fuel us.
That gives you passion and
right.
You know, that desire to have fun again.
Exactly. Well, now I'm going to, I've got a couple of things that added to my list, and I'm going to share one because you may be the person I dragged to this with me. So in the Central Coast of New South Wales, so it's a spot just north of Sydney in Australia, if you're from other parts of the world, there is a lightsaber academy.
Wow.
So you can, and I've known about this for a while, but I just hadn't written it down. It's called the Sons of Obi-Wan Saber Academy.
Wow.
Yeah, so you can go
and definitely drag me along.
Right. So
I've got a rubber arm.
Don't do that. So that went on my list. I'm definitely want to add going back to Disneyland to do the Galaxy's Edge thing again. There's more rides and stuff, and I think that would be cool.
Awesome.
And one other thing that I wanted to add, which is a small thing, but there's a new show. You may have seen ads for The Mandalorian.
Yeah, I've been watching it.
You have?
I have.
Are you liking it?
Baby Yoda. Oh my goodness. Guys, if you are looking for some happiness this Christmas, some old-fashioned innocent cheer, definitely tune in. Disney Plus.
Really?
Oh yeah. And look, like you won't get perhaps that, you know, buzz of the ultimate Star Wars storyline the same way. And I know a lot of people are saying like the only purpose of them watching it is Baby Yoda, but it's Christmas. Who cares?
Exactly.
You've got the time to chill out, you know, and it beats watching one of the old Christmas movies anyway.
Right. And look, it's getting 94%. on Rotten Tomatoes. People are really loving it. And,
I love it.
That's actually another tip that I meant to write down for people about the movie. Baby Yoda is not in Rise of Skywalker.
No, that's it.
Just to be clear, because I think people were disappointed. Actually,
No, that's it.
Alison that came with us, she's like, where was Baby Yoda? I'm like, that's in a different thing entirely.
Yep, that's it.
So just be ready. It doesn't have Baby Yoda.
No, but look, if you're looking for Baby Yoda, the Mandalorian, oh my goodness. And it's ridiculously cute.
Yes.
It gives you the warm and fuzzies.
It really does. It really does. Now, I'm conscious that we've gone a bit longer than we do with these reviews, but I felt like we had to. It's a new movie and, so many people.
And it's Star Wars.
And it's Star Wars, so, why wouldn't we want to talk about it?
Yeah.
So I want to wrap up, but before we do, we always sort of review a key character as an action hero, or particularly as a finance action hero. So let's take, Ray is sort of our lead character, and I'm always tend to go for the female action heroes only because there aren't that many of them.
Mm-hmm.
So the sort of thing we're looking for is, any planning, thinking before you leap, contingency plans, that sort of stuff. I have to say, Ray, not so strong with that stuff.
No, we only see her training kind of once or twice and she's never that successful, is she?
Right. So, and I think, the training thing is good. So she is, okay, I've got this big thing, defeat baddie. Okay, I've got to do training. So that's a good thing. But planning generally, even planning for missions, I felt like that whole thing, it's just, let's just get in, the Millennium Falcon.
I thought that was
go.
very rushed. Actually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, what? It's happening already? Hold on a minute.
Exactly. Wait. Nobody's going to think about it. Is nobody going to do any planning?
I actually checked the time on my phone because I was like, this is too early for a battle in the movie. It can't happen early.
So I do think, not so great there. I think one of the other traits we look for in a finance action hero is questioning the norms, so to make sure that you're living your best life. You can't take what society expects. And I think she fully leans into that, and really the whole Jedi sort of religion does. It's like it looks a lot deeper. It's not interested in surface level. Yeah. It's really about yourself. So I think that's pretty good for her. But one of the other things we look for is running the numbers right before the mission. Really, the only thing they do is, we're outgunned, outmanned.
Let's keep doing it.
It's like,
Let's apply logic and rely on our gut instinct.
Exactly. So I think, look, it's the only other thing actually that I'd say is one of the things we love to see is somebody that's valuing experiences than things, right? So that's something we're looking for. And she's 100% that. You never see her with anything but really her lightsaber, her stick, a fighting stick, and the friends around her. Like she's as pared back as you can possibly be. So to be fair, she's probably lent right into that. She's not collecting trinkets or anything.
No, that's
and it's not about money for her. So I think that's pretty cool. So therefore, I'd say she's probably an okay finance action hero, but there's probably
somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and maybe she's young, right? She'll get better. We all start.
She's on a journey.
Exactly. So maybe a 6 or a 7, I guess, out of 10. So before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share, or perspectives on the movies, or tips or anything?
I think one thing just before we wrap up that's worth talking about, especially in this context, that kind of took a bit of a back seat but I thought was great, was Poe's got this moment where he feels like he's not ready or not experienced or qualified enough to do what he has to do, and he gets this advice like, no one's ever going to be ready, no one's ready. You just have to do it.
Yes.
And that really stuck with me after the movie, even though it's supposed to just be a little background storyline going on. And I think that's really good, not just in a financial context, but in an adventure context. A lot of us withhold on our dreams because we don't think that we're qualified or not, or we're ready enough, or we're not fit enough to do what we need to do, or we're not, we don't have we're not the right stage in our career to do this, And it's a really good lesson to just feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yes, because you're right. Nobody's ever ready. Ask any parents with a new baby. Nobody's ever ready for that.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
got to do it. It's such a good
We're
point.
all in the same boat, you know. We're all imposters.
Yep.
Just giving it a go.
Absolutely.
It's a good reminder, I think, to all of us not to wait until we're ready to do something that we really love, because life is short.
Yes,
You know?
100%. And what's the worst that could happen? You're no good at it, or you need some help. And I guess that's the other thing is you've got all these people around you. You need to lean on them.
Exactly.
You know, and ask for help, and they might, may either have some advice or a quip, or just be there. And I'd encourage the listeners, if you haven't seen the movie yet, look forward to that moment, because the person that gives him the piece of advice is awesome too. So you'll really enjoy it just for what it is.
It's a beautiful moment.
It is. It is. Oh, that's a wonderful way to wrap up. Thank you, my dear, for joining us on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Not at all. Oh, it had to be somebody that loved Star Wars. We would love to hear if you agreed or disagreed on our takes on the latest Star Wars movie, or even our takes on Disneyland itself. So please make sure you subscribe, rate, and leave us your comments and feedback on your podcast platform of choice. And I'd really love to hear about what's up next for you, because, you know, there's an adventure story out there simply waiting for its action hero to step up. And I'm pretty sure that action hero is you.